Number 49. So you have $800 and you're reducing the price by 15%, and then you're going to take that price and reduce it again by 20%. Well, you can take, to find the first reduced price, you can take 15% of that and then subtract it from the original amount. But you could quit if you, instead of taking 15% of 800, if you'll take 85%. So 85% of 800 is, and I don't use the percent key, 0.85 times 800 is 680. So it was reduced to 680. Then it was reduced by 20%, which will be 80% of that, right? 80% of 680 is 544. Okay. So that's after it was reduced 2 different times, it ended up being 544. You may think, well, that's 35% off of 800, but it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. You have to do it individually. But that's not answering the question. It says what percent of the original price was the final price? Okay. What percent of the original price is the final price? In other words, what percent of the final price is 800? If you'll use the keywords in working with percents, it's easy to change it to an equation. This would be x of is times 544 is equals 800. So x is equal to 800 divided by 544. What? The 800 and the 544. Hold on a minute. What percent of the original price, of the original price, I have these two backwards. What percent of the original price is 544? So then that's x times 800 is equal to 544. So x is equal to 544 divided by 800, which is 0.68 or 68%. Okay, number 50. Even if you've never seen that problem before, you're just using logic. If you have four numbers multiplied together and somehow they give you 24, and then you take 3 of those 4 numbers and multiply by another number and get 0, which of the following must be true? So which letter is different? L. And then for, in the G, H, J, K, we know that those letters cannot represent 0, right?
Yes.
Because if it equals 24, they can't equal 0. Any one of them cannot be 0. But then if you take 3 of those numbers that are not 0, and you multiply it by another number, and it gives you 0, then that number must be 0, right? So L must be 0, but you can go through, L has to equal 0. You can go through and make sure the other ones are not true. So does everybody get that one? Pretty much. Just pay attention that the letters, how they change. Number 51. Given the vertices of the parallelogram in standard XY coordinate plane below, what is the area of the triangle? triangle GHJ. Of course, you don't have to show all that when you're doing your test. So, we're looking at the top right-hand corner, or top right-hand part of the figure for that triangle. What is the base? So there's, I guess it depends on what you want to consider your base, but I would consider from G to H the base. Right? From G to H, the base. So what's the distance? You don't really, since that's a horizontal line, you don't really have to do the distance formula, do you? What's the length of GH? Everybody look at that and tell me the length of GH. 4. And then the height. Now that one is you want to look at your Y values. Look at where G and H are and look at where J is. You don't want to do the distance formula because it's not the distance from J to H or J to G. It's the perpendicular distance from J to the horizontal line that goes through 3. Does that make sense? So what is it? 11. Did everybody get that? And it's 11. We're on the packet that says 5, I think. Yes. But you can get both. But we're working on 5. It's okay. Does Eric? Yes. Don't understand? Okay. So you have this. Let's look at it this way without the coordinate plane. Oh, wait. Let's do this. Okay. So if this is the base, the height is not from here to here or here to here. The height is the perpendicular distance from the top of the triangle, which is down here, because we're calling this the base, perpendicular to the side. To the base. So if I go this way, it's not perpendicular. If I go this way, it's not perpendicular, but I have to go straight. And I know that this is a horizontal line. This is at 3 on the y-axis. And this is at -8. So the distance from here to here is 11. So you have to look at your y values to get that. So what, 22? Okay, 52 is similar to 50. You're having to think about how numbers work. So look at that and see if you think you know the answer. You're just trying to find one that is true. Finding the one that is true is easier than finding the one that is false. What do you think? What did you say? I think I heard A. Did I hear A? H. Oh, H. I was going to say, I didn't know if you meant F. What's F? It's F. So, first of all, if you plug in numbers, in order for 3 numbers to multiply together to equal 1, you could have different things. You wouldn't have to say that xz is equal to 1 over y, but that would satisfy that. I just looked at F and I saw that that works, and I thought, well, if only 1 is true, then I don't have to worry about the rest. So I didn't really look at the rest. But do you see where, if you substitute that in, So if you have x, y, z equal to 1, and if I say that xz is 1 over y, replace xz with 1 over y times y, that does equal 1. If x, y, and z are all greater than 0, is there any, well, what? Who said something?
You're not happy because you have a negative one.
Yeah. I guess the others can be, so let's look at the wording. Which of the following conditions must be true? That doesn't mean that the others can't be true, but F must be true. So G is true, but F must be true for that to work. Because you can find numbers greater than 0 to plug in and make that not true. So that one's really, I don't really particularly care for that kind of question, but they tend to have several of those on there. So, but anyway, like I said, I just tried F, and I know that that must be true for that to work, because it's hard to get numbers to equal 1 when you're multiplying them all together, right? So, okay, 53. Okay, there's a shortcut if you want to know it. I'm first going to show you if you don't know a shortcut, and then I'll show you the shortcut. So you have we want to know the y-intercept. The y-intercept is that right there. So if we solve this for y, whatever number ends to the right of x, that's the y-intercept. So that would be 2y equals negative 6x plus 14 divided by 2, y equals negative 3x plus 7. 7 is the y-intercept. But if you want to cut out time and work this faster, you would have to memorize something. The y-intercept is c divided by b. C divided by b. A x plus by equals c. Should probably use capital letters. Sometimes they use capitals, sometimes they don't. So if you take this number and divide it by the number in front of y, because that's what you end up doing. That's the only thing that happens to 14. You take that number and divide it by 2. Because when you move the x over, that does not affect this number. But when you divide by the coefficient of y, it changes it. That would be the quick way, but you would have to memorize that. Not that it takes long to do it the other way. Number 54. Number 54 is a really good example of you need to practice this kind of problem so that you don't get caught up spending too much time on it. So the average of 6 integers, a set of 6 integers, is 38. So something plus something plus something. 6 times, you add them together and divide it by 6, it equals 38. So we don't really know for sure what to put up top. Well, because we don't want to put x plus y plus z, we don't want to use a bunch of different variables. We don't really care about what each one is. We could actually say that they're all x, right? We're not going to use x. We could actually say it's 6, this is the confusing part, 6 times 38. Do you get that?
Yes.
Huh? Okay. If you don't, I'll come back. But you've got 6 numbers that when you add them together and divide by 6, it's 38. And another way to represent that is 6 times 38. Because we don't care, they're not 38. It's not 38 plus 38 plus 38 plus 38. But since they average out to 38, we can say that each one is 38. Does that make sense? So if you made different test scores, but your average was 38, that's the same as making a 38 on every test. Does that make sense? So we can say 6 times 38 divided by 6 is 38. But we want to know if the average increases to 47, that would be a 7th test. We have 6 times 38 representing the first 6 tests plus x. So there's your equation. There may be a better way, but that's my way. That's how I think. So
I just multiplied 6 and 47 by 7 and subtracted the larger one.
okay. What did you get?
1.
Okay, that's right. So what did you do?
I did 38 times 6, I got 228, and I did 47 times 7, I got 329, and I subtracted 228 from 329.
Okay. It's kind of the same thing. So that may be quicker, I don't know. Okay, so when you multiply by 7, well, let's multiply this. What is that? 228. And 7 times 47, 329. Subtract, yeah, this is essentially what you did. So that's the answer. All right. And it seems like we've had something like this on every single practice test, so probably it will be on your, something similar to it will be on your exam. Number 55. So the area of this rectangle is 80 square feet. If the length of the floor is 4 feet less than 4 times the width, can you do that part? That much? 4 feet less, the length, I'm representing the length by the width because it says the length is 4 feet less than 4 times the width. What is the width? Okay, so we know we have an equation here. Area is length times width, so the area would be the length is 4w minus 4 times w. So that's 4w, oh wait, I can plug in for area. 80. 4w squared minus 4w. And when we have a quadratic term and a linear term, we need to set it equal to 0 so that we can factor. Factor out of 4. The 4 actually doesn't matter at this point. We're going to factor here. That would be w minus 5 and w plus 4. Set each factor equal to 0. W equals 5 and negative 4. Can you have a negative width? No. So 5 is the, what did it ask for? 5. 5 is the answer. It asked for the width. And you can plug that back in. Is that true? Is 5 times, what is that, 16 equal to 80? Yes. I do not like number 56. Has anybody attempted number 56? So read that and see if you can figure out which one works. Jason's neighbor wants the pool to be as large as possible. With the edge of the pool at least 8 feet from the edge of the backyard all around, how long should the radius of the pool be? Okay, well, you know that the shortest side you've got to come in 8 feet, and it's a circle. So then here's your, it doesn't really matter this way and this way, right? Because your diameter or radius will be depending on the shortest side. Does that make sense? Because it's a circle. It's not an oval. Okay? So what is it asking for? The radius? So you would subtract 16 from 50 and get 34, but that would be the diameter. So the diameter is 34, so the radius has to be 17. So really the length of the rectangle doesn't matter. It's the width. Number 58. You've got f of x is equal to x squared plus 3. Find f of x plus y. Don't make these harder than what they have to be. All you're doing is taking this and plugging it in for this, whatever's here. So that means you have x plus y squared plus 3. Give me just a minute. You need to be able to square this quickly. Squaring a binomial. Square the first plus 2 times the first times the second. 2 times xy plus the last squared plus 3, and that's your answer. All right. We'll see you Friday, maybe. Do as much of this as you can between now and then as far as the first half. We'll finish it and start on 4. Test 4.
Can I get one of these test questions?
Yes, if you didn't get test 4, you can get one. Even if you're not coming back. Be good for practice.
Get out of here, Joey.
And that's why this practice is really good, because you're smart enough to do it. It's just you remember, And that's like most students here. They can do it, but you have to have your memory job.
Remember all those tiny little tricks like how to square.
Well, the thing is, if you don't remember the trick, you can always square it out first out of your lap. The problem is, you've got time that you're trying to.
Couldn't come today anyway.
Well, I have, if you want to get test 4, just to have, it's over there. We haven't covered it yet. We'll cover it Friday, but just in case you don't
Where
get to
did
make
2
it.
X come from?
Calcium,
Because
Oh,
when
right, we
you,
had that correct.
skin,
the middle term would be
titanium,
this times this times 2. You double it.
Why is it times 2?
Because that's the rule.
titanium.
A plus B squared is equal to A squared plus 2AB plus B squared. It's the rule. So let's say you have A plus 3B squared. That's A squared plus 6. See, 3 times 1 is 3. Double that, you get 6AB plus 9B squared. You have to square the 3 and the B. Square the whole like
In 10th grade, right? You really don't have to take it until like the summer.
I want to get ahead.
Well, it was would you do the same thing? We just put top.
like A plus 1/2 B.
Yeah.
So it's coming up. So it'd be A squared plus,
1.
this times this is 1/2 AB, and times 2 would be 1. And then 1/4 B squared.
Wait, I thought once.
Cool, I got the rolling line.
One tax is one. One tax.
1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. Just
Yeah, okay. Would this be the geometry?
it's in the algebra book for sure. In algebra 1, it may be in algebra 2 also.
My bad.